My dad died. Then my uncle tried to take everything. Grief is a strange thing. It doesn't just knock the wind out of you. It empties the room, dims the lights, and makes everything feel like it's underwater. When my dad passed away suddenly last year, it felt like the sky had fallen. No warnings. No time to prepare. Just a phone call. A whisper on the line. He didn't make it. He left behind more than memories. He left behind a legacy. And unfortunately, a target. My dad, Paul Richards, wasn't a rich man. But he was proud. He worked construction his whole life, saved every penny, and put his heart into a plot of land just outside of town. 2.5 acres. Slightly wooded. Quiet. To him, it was everything. He always said, "This land's gonna be yours one day. Build something real on it. A home. A life." After the funeral, I was in pieces. My mom was quieter than usual. And that's when my Uncle Mike showed up. Mike Richards. My dad's younger brother. The family charmer. He always had a story, a big idea, a new hustle. But he wasn't around much. Dad used to say, "Mike's always chasing shortcuts." So when he started coming by regularly, offering to help with groceries, bills, and sorting out Dad's estate, I wanted to believe he was stepping up. Family, right? He was all smiles, all sympathy. Brought coffee, raked leaves, even cried once while talking about how Paul was the only real man in the family. But even in grief, something about Mike felt off, like a guy rehearsing his lines. The first red flag? He started asking a lot of questions about the land. Whose name is on the deed? Did your dad ever write a will? You guys haven't done anything at the courthouse yet, right? He'd say it casually, like he was just checking in. But his eyes, they were always scanning, calculating. One afternoon, I saw him walking the land with 2 men in suits. No warning, no heads up, just him and 2 strangers, pointing, talking, laughing. When I asked him about it, he waved it off. Just some old friends. Developers. They were giving me tips on drainage and zoning stuff. Thought it might help. I nodded, but something in my chest tightened. Why developers? That night, I couldn't sleep. Something didn't sit right. My gut kept telling me, he's up to something. I started watching him. Quietly. No confrontation. Just listening. Waiting. Then came the envelope. He showed up at our door with a manila folder and a friendly grin. "Hey kiddo," he said. "Talk to a guy down at the county. Just some forms to update ownership. Real basic. You and your mom just need to sign." I took the envelope. Smiled. But my hands were shaking. That night, I didn't open it alone. I called Amy, a friend of mine who's a real estate lawyer. She scanned the documents over Zoom. Stopped cold about 10 minutes in. "He's trying to transfer ownership to himself," she said flatly. "There's a clause here. It's buried, but if you sign this, he becomes the sole manager. That means he can lease, sell, or mortgage the property." I felt sick. He was trying to steal it. My dad's land. His legacy. The same land we cried over just weeks ago. The betrayal hit harder than the grief. But I didn't confront him. Not yet. Instead, I followed him. 2 days later, I passed by his house. He didn't see me. He was outside, pacing the driveway, talking on his phone. "Yeah, once I get those signatures, it's mine. They don't even know what it's worth." I froze. That was it. Proof. I recorded the rest of the call. Took it to Amy. And the next morning, we filed everything legally to secure the land under my mom's and my name. He couldn't touch it anymore. But I wasn't done. I wanted him to know we knew. So I planned a Sunday barbecue. Family only. One last gathering for Dad. Mike showed up. Brought wine. Said all the right things. I waited until everyone had a plate in their hand. Until the sun was low. Until we were all sitting in the backyard Dad loved. Then I stood up, holding the same manila envelope. "Mike, remember this?" I asked, voice steady. He blinked. Smiled. "Sure, just those forms." "Right," I said. "You mind explaining this clause to the family? The one that gives you sole authority over Dad's land." The air changed. He started stammering. "That's just legal language. I was helping you." I pulled out my phone. Hit play. His voice echoed across the yard. "Once I get those signatures, it's mine." Silence. You could hear the wind shift. My mom covered her mouth. My aunt's wine glass slipped from her hand and shattered. Mike stood, tried to defend himself. Something about miscommunication. But it was over. He left without another word. We haven't seen him since. Today, the land is ours. Fully. Legally. Protected. We planted cherry trees. Put up a simple sign at the entrance. Richard's family land, for those who earned it. But even now, the betrayal lingers. It wasn't about money. It was about trust. My dad trusted his brother, trusted that he'd look after us. And Mike used that trust as a weapon. I found one of my dad's journals a few weeks later. In the margins, he had written, "If anything happens to me, Mike will know what to do." That line broke me. He believed in him. And Mike tried to take everything. But we fought back. We protected what mattered. And now, I share this story not for revenge, but for awareness. Because betrayal doesn't always come from enemies. Sometimes, it comes with hugs and handshakes and warm smiles. If you've lost someone and there's property involved, please get legal advice. Don't wait. Don't assume. Grief makes you vulnerable. Greed makes people dangerous. And trust, once broken, doesn't grow back. If this story made you feel something, maybe share it. Maybe someone out there needs to hear it. Maybe you do. Thanks for sitting with me through this. And hey, if you ever want to hear more stories like this one, real, raw, and hard to say out loud, you know where to find me. Some truths don't echo unless someone dares to speak them. And I won't be silent anymore.